The sky burned red. Dr. Lisa stood at the observatory window and watched the streak of light cut across the darkness. It was not a meteor. She knew what meteors looked like. This was something else entirely. The light moved too fast, too straight, too deliberate. She grabbed her phone and called the emergency line. Her hands shook as she spoke to the operator. "This is Dr. Lisa from the National Observatory. We are seeing unidentified objects entering Earth's atmosphere, multiple objects. This is not natural." The operator's voice came back calm and professional, but Lisa could hear confusion underneath. "Doctor, we have no reports of anything unusual. Are you certain?" "Yes, check the military radar now." 5 minutes later, the answer came. Every radar system on Earth showed the same thing. Something was coming, something big, something that had just breached the atmosphere. Captain Daniel Hayes was in his office at the military base when the alarm sounded. Not the usual drill alarm. The emergency alarm. The one that meant something was actually wrong. He stood up and moved quickly toward the command center, his decades of military training pushing him into focus mode. The screens showed ships. Many ships. They hung above Earth's major cities like dark clouds about to release a storm. Each ship was the size of a small mountain. Their design was angular and cold, nothing like anything human engineers had ever built. "How long until they do something?" Hayes asked the young officer beside him. "Unknown, sir. They have not made any communication attempts. They are simply waiting." The waiting lasted 30 minutes. Then the ships opened fire. The first bombardment hit New York City. A beam of pure energy came down from the sky and erased an entire city block. Then another, and another. The buildings did not burn, they did not collapse. They simply ceased to exist, turned into dust that fell like snow. In Los Angeles, the same thing happened. Then London. Then Tokyo. The empire, which had conquered over 200 worlds, did not see the point in negotiating with primitives. They had learned long ago that quick, brutal force saved time. These humans would either surrender or be destroyed. Either way, the conquest would be complete by week's end. Governor was in his office in Washington when the first impacts hit the eastern seaboard. He watched the news feeds as his city burned. Military installations exploded. Hospitals collapsed. Airports became ruins of twisted metal and ash. He understood in that moment that everything humanity knew was ending. The military response was immediate but useless. Fighters launched from every base that still had power. Jets screamed into the sky toward the massive ships. They fired every weapon they had. Missiles, bullets, energy weapons. None of it worked. The weapons simply bounced off the ships or dissipated harmlessly against their shields. In return, they did not even slow down. They continued their bombardment of Earth's military centers and population centers with absolute precision. The war lasted 3 days before anyone could call it a war. Captain Hayes watched from the command center as one military base after another went dark on the screens. He tried to coordinate responses, tried to organize counterattacks. But they were throwing rocks at gods. The technology was so far beyond human capability that resistance seemed insane. And yet people kept fighting. Emma Cross was a young soldier, barely 22 years old when the invasion started. She had been stationed at Fort as a communications specialist. When the alarm went off, she did what she was trained to do. She helped evacuate civilians from the base. She ran toward the danger while others ran away. When the beam hit the barracks, it happened so fast that Emma did not understand what she was seeing. One moment there was a building. The next moment there was nothing, just a crater where the building used to be. Her friends had been in that barracks. Now they were gone. She kept running. By the second day, the communications networks were destroyed. Television stopped working. Radio stations went offline. Phones became useless. Humanity lost its ability to talk to itself. Each city, each town, each survivor group became isolated, cut off from the wider world. People did not know if other places still existed or if they were the last survivors. The power grids failed. Hospitals shut down. Water treatment facilities stopped working. Cities that had been alive with light and sound became dark, quiet tombs. Survivors gathered in basements and subway tunnels, huddling together in the darkness, wondering when the beams from the sky would find them. Dr. Lisa survived the bombardment by chance. She had been underground when the observatory was destroyed. She made her way through the ruins of the city and found a military bunker that was still intact. Inside, she found Captain Hayes and a few dozen soldiers gathered around a radio. "They expect surrender," Hayes was saying. "They think we will give up." "Will we?" asked one of the soldiers. Hayes did not answer immediately. He looked at the map on the wall showing which cities were still burning. Billions of people had died in those 3 days. The military infrastructure of the entire world was destroyed. The global economy had collapsed. Civilization itself was crumbling. "No," Hayes said finally. "We will not surrender, because if we do, humanity ends, not just dies, ends. There will be nothing left of us." Lisa stepped forward. "Captain Hayes." Hayes turned and recognized her. "Doctor, thank God, we need your help. We need to understand these ships. We need to find their weakness." "They have weaknesses," Lisa said quietly. "Everything has weaknesses, but first we need to survive. And we need to find the others. There are survivors all over the world. We need to contact them. We need to organize." In the darkness beneath the ruins of human civilization, in bunkers and caves and hidden places, survivors began to move. They began to think. They began to plan. And they began to understand something that they had never considered. Humans did not give up. Humans did not break. Humans fought. 2 weeks after the invasion, Colonel received a visitor in the underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The bunker was deep, built during the Cold War, designed to survive nuclear war. It had survived something worse. It had survived the end of the world above. Emma Cross descended the metal stairs with Captain Hayes. She was dirty, tired, and angry. The anger was new. The anger burned hot inside her chest and made her hands shake. "This is Emma Cross," Hayes said. "She coordinated the evacuation of Fort. She has tactical instincts, raw but real." Studied the young woman. "You want to fight?" "Yes, sir," Emma said. "We are fighting," replied, "just not in the way you think." The colonel led them to the command center. The screens showed the fleet positions, marked in red above North America. Dozens of them, each one dropping destruction on whatever remained of human cities. "The sent a transmission," explained. "They want surrender. They are giving us 1 week to lay down weapons and accept rule. They say resistance is pointless." "And we are?" Hayes asked. "We are going to show them they are wrong," said simply. In a laboratory hidden beneath the bunker, Professor worked on a piece of technology. One of their drones had crashed near Denver before being shot down by an old military anti-aircraft gun. The gun had jammed. The drone had crashed anyway, damaged but mostly intact. Was a weapons engineer with 40 years of experience. He had designed systems for the military his entire life. Now he was taking apart an alien machine, studying it piece by piece. "It is not magic," he said to the others in the lab. "It is just technology, advanced, yes, but not magic. And if it is technology, we can understand it, and if we understand it, we can break it." He held up a component that glowed faintly blue. "This is a power regulator. See how it is designed? It expects the other components to work flawlessly. There is no redundancy, no backup. They think they are too advanced to fail, so they do not plan for failure." Lisa listened carefully. She had been working with for 10 days, and every day revealed new information about their weapon systems are centralized, she said. "Everything connects to a main command node. If we disable that node, the entire fleet loses coordination." "How do we reach it?" asked. "We don't," said, entering the room. "We use their own systems against them." The plan was born from desperation and the kind of creativity that only humans could manage. They had a communication network that linked their ships. It was designed to be secure, unbreakable. But it was also designed assuming that no one in the galaxy would ever be primitive enough to try breaking it. They were wrong. A team of human programmers working in shifts in the bunker began to analyze the signals from the ships. They had no ability to decrypt them, but they did not need to. They needed to mimic them. They needed to understand the pattern, the rhythm, the flow. It took 6 days. On the 7th day, Doctor and a young programmer named Park successfully created a signal that looked, to the systems, like a legitimate command from one of their own ships. "We are in," Park said, his voice shaking. "Can you send false orders?" asked. "Yes," Park said, "but they will only believe small orders, nothing major, nothing that would change their overall strategy." "Then we start small," decided. The first false order told a patrol unit to move to a different location. The patrol unit moved. They never realized anything had happened. The second order told another unit to stand down from attack. It did. By the third day of false orders, the fleet was in chaos. Units were moving to wrong locations. Supply lines were being redirected. Weapons systems were being taken offline for false maintenance checks. And the commanders could not figure out why. Emma Cross led the first ground assault. It was small, just 30 people armed with stolen weapons and improvised explosives. They targeted a landing site that had been separated from the main fleet by the false orders had sent. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, the soldiers were dead or captured. Human soldiers had died too, 8 of them, but they had won. They had defeated soldiers in direct combat. The news spread through the bunker like fire. Humans could win, humans could fight, humans could kill the invaders. More teams formed, more attacks happened, each one was small. Each one seemed insignificant, but together they were strangling the invasion. Gathered his team. Hayes was there. Emma was there. Park and 20 other leaders of resistance cells across North America were there, some in person, some on video screens. "They are learning," said. "They are starting to understand that we are not primitive. They are starting to understand that we are dangerous. This is good. Scared enemies make mistakes. We need them to make big mistakes." "How do we make them panic?" Hayes asked. "We take out a major command ship," said. It was not a question. The mission took 2 weeks to plan. They identified a cruiser that was stationed near what used to be Denver. The ship was massive, a weapons platform designed to bomb entire continents. Getting close to it meant certain death. Everyone knew that. Emma Cross volunteered immediately. "I will lead it," she said. "You will die," said bluntly. "Probably," Emma agreed. "But I am already dead. We all are. We are just the walking dead. They killed us when they invaded. This is just deciding how to spend the days we have left." The assault team consisted of 15 people, all volunteers. They used hijacked equipment to approach the ship. They had explosives that had designed, shaped charges meant to pierce armor. When they reached the ship, they planted them in a pattern that had calculated would reach the power core. Emma was the last person to set her charge. She could see the soldiers responding to the intrusion. Time was running out. She set the timer on her explosive, turned, and started running. The blast came just as she was clear. The explosion was bigger than had predicted. The entire section of the ship came apart. The cruiser listed to one side, damaged beyond immediate repair. Emma made it to the extraction point with 2 minutes to spare. She was alive. More importantly, they had lost one of their major weapons platforms. And humanity had proven that they could not only survive, but could hurt the invaders. In the bunker, watched the reports coming in. Across the globe, other resistance cells were becoming bolder. Some were succeeding, some were failing, but all of them were fighting. "They never expected this," Lisa said too. "They expected primitives to surrender. They did not expect primitives to become soldiers. They did not expect primitives to organize and fight with tactics and intelligence." "They underestimated us," said. "That is their fatal mistake, because what they do not understand is that humans are at our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose." The commanders above the planet were starting to understand that their conquest was not G4 months into the invasion. General Frank arrived at the command bunker with new authority. The old government had collapsed. The new government was still forming. For now, there was simply a military hierarchy that everyone agreed to follow because it was better than chaos. General was 63 years old, and he had been in the military since he was 18. He had fought in wars that most people had forgotten about. He understood combat at every level, and he understood that the current situation was not a war of weapons. It was a war of will. "They made a critical error," said to his gathered commanders. He stood before a map showing positions. They had not moved significantly in 6 weeks. "They conquered over 200 worlds. Every one of those worlds was civilized. Everyone had technology. Everyone had organized militaries, and every single one surrendered within days. Because they were logical," said, "because they knew they could not win." "Exactly," agreed. "They believe that all intelligent beings are logical, that when faced with impossible odds, they will surrender to survive. But humans are not like that. We are not logical in that way. We will fight even when victory seems impossible. We will die for our homes, our families, our beliefs. They cannot understand this because their own species abandoned emotion millions of years ago. They are perfect logic with no heart. We are imperfect logic with all heart." And that is why we are going to beat them. Emma Cross listened from her seat. She was now a major, holding a rank she had earned through success in combat. She had led a dozen more operations since the assault on the command cruiser. All of them had succeeded. She had lost people, but she had hurt the... "What is our strategy?" she asked. "Asymmetrical warfare," replied. "We cannot defeat them in open battle. They have superior firepower and superior shields, but we can make their occupation costly. We can make every day harder. We can hit their supply lines. We can destroy their equipment. We can kill their soldiers, and with each success, our people will become more confident and theirs will become more desperate." Dr. Lisa brought the technological analysis. "The ships rely on a few critical systems: power generation, life support, weapons control, communications. If we can damage these systems in coordinated strikes, we can disable an entire ship." Howe asked. "We use their own technology," Professor said. He had aged 10 years in the last 4 months, but his mind remained sharp. "We can build weapons using components, weapons that can penetrate their armor because the components understand how to do it." Nodded slowly. "Then that is what we will do. We will build weapons from their own technology. We will make them kill themselves." The manufacturing effort was massive and impossible, and they did it anyway. Hidden factories in bunkers across the world began producing weapons designed by human engineers using components scavenged from destroyed equipment. Each weapon was crude compared to standards, but each one worked. Emma Cross did not lead a squad anymore. She led a battalion, 500 soldiers under her direct command. They moved like ghosts through the ruins of North America, striking at positions and disappearing before the response teams could find them. One strike destroyed a supply depot. Another damaged a landing pad. A third hit a communications relay. Each operation was planned by committee, executed by soldiers, and learned from by the entire military. Humans were fast learners. Humans were adaptable. Humans could change their tactics based on what worked and what did not. They could not. They had a strategic doctrine that worked when the enemy surrendered quickly. But this enemy did not surrender, so they kept doing the same things over and over, expecting different results. It was insane, and it was their doom. "They are starting to take losses," said, reviewing the intelligence reports. "Not from conventional combat, from accidents, from mistakes, from our operations degrading their systems. They had a ship explosion 3 days ago, caused by a weapons failure in one of the systems we targeted." "How many soldiers have we killed?" Emma asked. 18,000, said. "We have lost 80,000 civilians and military." Emma was quiet. Those were civilians she knew. People who had given their lives fighting. Children who had become soldiers and then become ghosts. "We have also killed something else," continued. "We have killed their confidence. The commanders are starting to understand that they may have made a mistake. They are starting to be scared." They sent a new message to Earth. It was not a demand for surrender anymore. It was a request for negotiation. They were offering terms. They would leave Earth if humans would agree to limited trade and non-aggression. Met with the civilian leadership. Governor was still alive, still coordinating civilian operations and rebuilding efforts. There were other leaders, too, emerging from the chaos. The world was learning to work together again. "Do we trust them?" one leader asked. "No," said, "but we also do not need to defeat them completely. We need to make them leave. If they are willing to leave, then we have won." "What if they attack again?" asked. "Then we will hurt them again," said simply. "But I do not think they will. They have learned that Earth is not easy. They have learned that we are not a simple conquest. They have learned that they were wrong to underestimate us." The negotiations took weeks. The wanted certain concessions. Humans refused. Back and forth it went, each side learning more about the other. They began to understand that humans would not break. Humans began to understand that they could be beaten. Captain Daniel Hayes led a final operation. It was not a combat operation. It was a statement. He led a unit of human soldiers to the largest remaining base on Earth. He carried a flag. The Earth flag, hastily made, showing the planet as seen from space. He walked into the base with 100 soldiers behind him. They could have killed them all. They did not. They watched. They saw the faces of the humans. They saw the determination. They saw what they had created. They saw that they had taken a species they thought was primitive and showed them they were warriors. Hayes planted the flag in the ground in front of the commander. "This is our world," he said. You may have the stars, you may have the galaxy, but this world is ours, and anyone who comes here with weapons will learn what Earth is. They will learn that we do not surrender. They will learn that we do not break. They will learn that we will fight until the last human is gone, so you can take your fleet and leave, or you can stay and be destroyed. Choose. The commander was silent for a long moment. Then he gave an order. The ships began to move. They began to leave Earth's orbit. It took 3 days for all of them to leave. As they went, the humans broadcast a message to every ship in the system, a message that would spread across the galaxy, a message about the planet Earth, a message about the humans who lived there. The message was simple. It said, "We are humans, we are from Earth, we have defeated your conquest. We have proven that courage and determination are more powerful than technology. If you come here, we will teach you this lesson too. We will teach you that there is one world in the galaxy that will never bow. One world where the inhabitants will fight until they have nothing left, but they will not surrender. This is Earth. Remember it, fear it, avoid it." As the last ship left Earth's atmosphere, 1 billion humans watched from the ground. They had lost their cities. They had lost their loved ones. They had lost everything that had been comfortable and safe. But they had kept their world. They had kept their freedom. They did not actually leave. They pulled their ships above the atmosphere into orbit and waited. They were calling for reinforcements from the outer colonies. They still believed they could win. They still believed that humans would eventually break. They did not understand humans. General had predicted this. He had expected them to regroup and attack again, so he had been preparing. In the 3 weeks of the false peace, humans had built more weapons. They had trained more soldiers. They had planned more tactics. But most importantly, they had learned how to hunt ships. Emma Cross studied the data on the screen. The fleet was reorganizing in orbital space above Earth. 3 major ships, 12 medium cruisers, and 43 smaller attack craft. It was a significant fleet. It was also trapped. "They made a mistake," she said to General. "They pulled straight up. They are directly above the populated areas. If we hit them with everything we have at once, they cannot move without destroying civilian areas. They cannot return to Earth without coming through our fire. They cannot escape without leaving their damaged ships." Smiled, "Then we do exactly that. We prepare a surprise for them." The plan was born from months of research and trial. Humans had captured and studied the power systems. Professor had designed weapons that could interfere with those systems. Doctor had identified the exact frequencies that would cause cascade failures in technology. They did not have the raw power of the weapons, but they had something better. They had precision. They had knowledge. They had understanding of exactly how to break what they had built. Admiral Pierce commanded Earth's newly reconstructed naval forces. The ships were old, pulled up from the ocean floor or salvaged from yards where they had been rusting. But they floated. They had guns. And now they had new weapons bolted to their decks. Weapons designed to hit orbiting targets. "How many ships do we have?" asked her. 23, Pierce replied. "None of them are as powerful as a single cruiser, but together, firing at targets I identify, we can damage their fleet." "Do it," said. The assault began at dawn. Humans fired everything they had at the fleet above them. Missiles screamed upward. Energy weapons designed from technology cut through the sky. The humans did not have infinite ammunition. They had exactly what they had built, but they used it perfectly. Emma Cross led the tactical operations, coordinating the attacks. She had learned from months of combat how they responded. They were fast but predictable. They followed protocols. They relied on their shields and armor rather than on adaptation. The first ship took hits from 7 different directions at once. Their shields held for 18 seconds. Then they failed. The ship shuddered as human weapons tore into its hull. It lost power in one section, then another. It could not descend because there were civilian cities below. It could not fight because the damage was too extensive. The crew abandoned the ship. The vessel fell from orbit and burned in Earth's atmosphere, a meteor of alien technology. The other ships tried to retreat, but Admiral Pierce had anticipated this. Human ships maneuvered to cut off their escape routes. They were boxed in with Earth below and humans all around. The second major ship attempted to force its way through the human fleet. It fired weapons designed to destroy from orbital ranges. But Admiral Pierce had armor and shields of her own, built from designs and human engineering combined. The human ships took damage. People died, but the ships stayed in position. Captain Daniel Hayes coordinated the ground operations. He had soldiers stationed at every major landing site on Earth. When they attempted to land reinforcement troops, they found themselves facing coordinated human attacks. The soldiers were excellent fighters, but they were few in number. The humans had something more valuable than numbers. They had knowledge of the terrain. Humans used Earth's geography against the. They trapped units in narrow passages where weapons could not be used effectively. They led them into weather they did not understand. They used terrain that seemed worthless to strategists, but which provided excellent protection and positioning for human soldiers. More importantly, the humans fought with fury. They fought for their homes. They fought for their families. They fought for their planet. The soldiers were professional, but they were not fighting for anything more than a job assignment. In space, the third major ship took critical damage and began to break apart. In the atmosphere, landing forces began to retreat or surrender. On the ground, human soldiers advanced, pushing them back toward their remaining ships. The commander made a final decision. He would attempt to break through the human blockade and escape. It was a desperate move. It was also his last option. The remaining cruisers assembled into a concentrated formation and accelerated toward open space. They fired weapons continuously, trying to create a corridor of destruction through the human fleet. Doctor was in the command center when she received the data. "They are at maximum thrust," she said. "They cannot stop even if they want to. They are committed to breaking through." "Then we stop them," said. Professor had built one weapon that had never been used. It was too powerful, too risky, too likely to cause damage to Earth itself if it failed, but now there was no choice. They had to use it. The weapon was launched from a facility in the Pacific Ocean. It was not a conventional missile. It was a device designed to create a localized electromagnetic pulse focused on technology. It would not harm human equipment. It would not harm organic life, but it would destroy electronics at a distance. The ships did not see it coming. How could they? Humans were not supposed to be capable of such technology. The pulse hit them at a distance of 50,000 miles. Every ship in the fleet lost power simultaneously. They lost their shields, they lost their weapons, they lost their engines. For humans, losing power was a problem that could be fixed, for it was a death sentence. They had no backup systems, they had no redundancy. They were built to never fail, and when they did, they could not survive it. The ships fell from orbit, some crashed into the ocean. Others came down in unpopulated regions. The humans did not chase them. They did not need to. The ships were dead. They were stranded. The remaining soldiers on Earth surrendered in groups of dozens. They realized that they were trapped on a world that was hostile to them. They had no way to escape. They had no way to communicate with their home world. They had only the choice to surrender or die. In the command center, General watched the final reports come in. The invasion was over. The fleet was destroyed. The occupation forces were in custody. "How many have we lost?" he asked quietly. Admiral Pierce did not answer immediately. The numbers were hard. Hundreds of thousands of humans had died. Cities were destroyed. The world had been devastated, but they had survived. They had defeated an enemy that they had no right to defeat. "All of them fought," she finally said. "All of them knew that they might die, and they fought anyway. That is why we won." Captain Hayes came to the command center with Emma Cross. Both of them looked exhausted. Both of them looked like they had seen too much death. "The soldiers want to know what we will do with them," Hayes said. "Consider the question carefully. The easy answer would be to execute them. They had killed billions of humans. They had destroyed human civilization. There were arguments for revenge." But was thinking about something else. He was thinking about the message that would need to be sent to the galaxy, the message about what humans were. "We will hold them," decided. "We will try them for their crimes. If they are found guilty, we will execute them. But we will not execute them in anger. We will not execute them as revenge. We will execute them as justice. There is a difference." Emma Cross nodded. She understood. If humans became if they became conquerors who killed without remorse, then they had not really lost. They had just transformed their enemies into copies of themselves. "What about their technology?" Doctor asked. "We study it," said. "We learn from it. We make sure that no one can ever do this to us again. And we prepare to defend ourselves against anyone else who might try." As the sun set over Earth that day, humans across the planet looked at the sky. For the first time in 5 months, there was no flash of weapons, no sound of explosions, No fear that today was the day the world ended. They had survived, they had fought, they had won. And they had learned that there are forces in the universe more powerful than the most advanced weapons. There is the will to survive. There is the courage to fight even when victory seems impossible. There is the determination of a species protecting its home. They had learned this lesson, they would not forget it, and they would make sure that other species learned it too. Across the galaxy, a message would spread. A message about the planet Earth. A message about the humans who lived there. A message that said, do not come here. Do not attempt what we are. 1 year after the invasion ended, Captain Daniel Hayes stood in what used to be Central Park in New York City. The park was still recovering. Trees had been replanted. The grass was returning to green. But the scars were visible. This place had been burned by weapons. This place had been a graveyard. Now it was becoming something else. It was becoming a memorial. Hayes watched as workers installed a monument. It was simple, just a stone wall with names. The names of people who had died defending Earth. It would take years to carve all the names. There were too many. General approached him. The general had aged significantly in the past year. He had been given the responsibility of leading Earth's defense into the future. It was a heavy burden. "How are you holding up?" asked. "I think about them," Hayes said. "Every day, I think about the people I did not save. I think about the cities we could not defend." "You saved humanity," said. "Do not minimize that." Hayes was quiet. He knew was right. But knowing something and believing it were different things. "Emma is arriving tomorrow," said. "She is coming to the trial. The commander wants to speak with her. It is unusual, but I granted the request." Hayes looked surprised. "What does he want?" "I do not know, but Emma asked to meet with him, so I allowed it." The next day, Emma Cross stood in front of the commander. His name was, and he had commanded the invasion fleet. He was in custody in a secure facility. He was guarded. He could not escape or hurt anyone. "You are the human warrior," said. His species spoke in harmonics that needed to be translated by machines. His voice was cold and precise. "Yes," Emma said. "You led attacks on our fleet. You coordinated your species' defenses. You were the most effective human military leader," said. "In my entire career, I have conquered 217 worlds. I have destroyed the military forces of species more advanced than yours, but none of them fought like you did. None of them refused to surrender. None of them used cunning and adaptation to overcome superior technology." Emma did not know what to say. She waited. "We made an error," continued. "We assumed that intelligence meant acceptance of logic. We assumed that a primitive species would see the obvious truth that resistance was futile. But you humans are not logical in that way. You are willing to lose to avoid surrender. This is strange to us. This is why we lost." "You lost because you underestimated us," Emma said. "Yes," agreed. "And by extension, we have underestimated all of you, all of humanity. The Empire has assumed that once a species reaches a certain level of technology, they will act in predictable ways. But your species proves this assumption wrong. You possess capabilities beyond technology. You possess something we have forgotten. You possess the will to continue even when continuing seems pointless." "It was not pointless," Emma said. "We were fighting for our homes." "Yes," said. "That was the thing we did not understand." Emma left the facility and went to the command center where General and Doctor were preparing the final message. The message that would be sent to the home world. The message that would be broadcast across the galaxy. "What should we tell them?" asked. "Should we tell them we are ready for war? Should we tell them to fear us?" Shook his head. "No, we tell them the truth. We tell them what we learned about ourselves." The message took days to compose. It had to be careful. It had to be clear. It had to convey the right meaning to a species that thought very differently from humans. The final message was sent through the captured communications network. It reached the home world. It reached every colony. It reached every ship in the galaxy. The message said, "We are humanity. We are from the planet Earth. We are sending this message to inform all species of the galaxy of an important fact. The planet Earth is not open for conquest. The planet Earth is not open for occupation. The planet Earth is defended by humans. Any species that attempts to conquer us will learn what we have learned, that humans are not logical in the way you might expect. We will not surrender to preserve our lives. We will fight to preserve our freedom. We will continue fighting even when victory seems impossible. We will sacrifice everything we have rather than accept slavery. This is our nature. This is what your conquest taught us. You came to dominate a primitive species and ended up creating warriors. You tried to destroy us and you showed us that we could survive. You underestimated us and you learned the price of that error. So we are telling all species of the galaxy, do not make the same mistake. Do not assume that intelligence means acceptance of logic. Do not assume that advanced technology guarantees victory. Do not assume that any species will surrender rather than fight. Humans will not. We will die before we surrender. We will burn our own world rather than see it enslaved. We are Earth. We are dangerous. We are here. Avoid us if you value your existence. The message was received across the galaxy. They considered it. They saw the logic. They had lost. They had underestimated. They had learned their lesson. More importantly, every other species learned the lesson too. The message that went through the galactic networks was simple: do not conquer Earth. The species that lived there were different. They would not follow the patterns of the 217 worlds that they had conquered. They would fight. They would die. They would not surrender. Months later, a deep space explorer encountered an automated message probe that had been sent toward distant space. The probe had been to Earth, had recorded observations, and was being sent outward to warn any species about the humans. The probe contained one final message. It was from a human named Hayes. It said, "If you are hearing this, then you have met humans or you are considering meeting humans. We are telling you now that conquest is not possible. Communication is possible, trade is possible, even friendship might be possible, but conquest is not. We have learned this. They have learned this. Now you need to learn it. Humans are not like other species. We will not go quietly into the night. We will not accept domination. We will not surrender our world. If you come with weapons, we will respond with weapons. If you come with open hands, we will consider your words. But if you come with the assumption that we are weak because we are not as advanced as you are, then you will learn what the learned. You will learn that we are dangerous. You will learn that humans are more than just technology. We are courage. We are hope. We are the will to survive. Come to Earth with respect or do not come at all." In the bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel watched the stars through the observation window. The defense network was being expanded. Weapons were being built. Humans were preparing for the future. Professor was still building weapons, but now he was teaching. Now he was training the next generation of human engineers. They would build things to protect Earth. They would build things to make sure that no species would ever again think they could come to humanity's world with weapons. Governor stood in front of the newly constructed Global Council building. Humans were uniting, not just militarily, but politically. For the first time in history, Earth had a unified government. It had come out of necessity. It had come from survival, but it existed. "We are going to rebuild," said to the people gathered. "We are going to build something better. We are going to build a civilization that can defend itself. We are going to build a world that is strong and united." Emma Cross trained soldiers, the next generation, the generation that would be ready if the galaxy ever tested Earth again. She taught them not just weapons, but philosophy. She taught them that they were fighting for something worth fighting for. "Remember why we fight," she told them every day. "We do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for glory. We fight for home. We fight for the right to exist on our world as we choose. We fight for the people we love. That is why we are stronger than any enemy. That is why we will always win." General wrote his report for the historical record. When future generations looked back at the invasion, they would see what happened. They would see how humans had been pushed to the edge of extinction and had fought back. They would see how the threat of destruction had united Earth. Wrote, "We were primitives, we were desperate, we had no hope. But we had something more valuable than all the technology combined. We had the will to survive. We had the love of our world. We had courage. These are the things that they underestimated. These are the things that saved us. And these are the things that will define humanity for all the ages to come. We are the species that refused to break. We are the species that fought when fighting seemed insane. We are the species that learned from our enemy and became stronger. We are Earth's defenders, and we will always be ready." As the sun set over the rebuilt world, humans looked at the sky. They no longer feared it. They respected it. They understood that the galaxy was vast and filled with species more advanced than they were. But they also understood something else. They understood that courage matters. They understood that will matters. They understood that there is no technology powerful enough to defeat a species that refuses to surrender. That is what they learned. That is what the galaxy learned. And that is what made humans different. The story of the invasion would spread across the galaxy. Other species would tell it. Other species would learn from it. And the message would be always the same. Do not underestimate humans. They are not what they seem. They are not primitive. They are not weak. They are the defenders of Earth, and Earth is the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Tempted because this world is defended by something we did not expect. It is defended by a species that will not break. It is defended by humans. And they had learned something about themselves. They had learned that they were dangerous. They had learned that they were strong. They had learned that there are some beings in the universe that you should never push to the edge of extinction, because when you do, they become unstoppable. Owing to be easy, they were also starting to understand that they had made a critical error. They had awakened something they should have left sleeping. They had awakened humanity's will to survive. And they were about to learn that no technology, no matter how advanced, could overcome the determination of a species fighting for its very existence. The invasion had destroyed Earth cities and killed billions of people, but it had also awakened something ancient and primal in human nature: the will to survive, the will to protect what remained, the will to fight back against impossible odds. The conquerors from the stars did not understand this yet, but they would learn. They would learn that there are some beings in the universe that become more dangerous when you push them to the edge of extinction.